Hey, I'm Dawn Bennett with Touch Remedies, your emotional freedom techniques practitioner and best-selling author of The Touch Crisis, and another book actually just got released, and also a relationship coach. And I'm here today to help you find the final key in your relationship, the vibrational body in your relationship. Key number 6 in this series. And by the way, if you stay to the end, you will see me trying to rope a fake steer here in the roping capital of the world, Wickenburg, Arizona. The last video, we talked about negative cognitive manifestations. Those times that we think or say out loud that they always or they never. And how by believing these things, by saying these things out loud, we start to believe them. And our brain starts to look for evidence of why this is all true. So when we look at vibrational body and relationships, what we're looking at are the long-term effects that form as a result of these cognitive manifestations, of these things that we say always or never about. So what happens is we create these conclusions and they become habituated, over and over and over again, until the way that we interact with our partner, right? I talked about this just a peach at the end of the last video. So the way that we interact with our partner starts becoming because of the way that we assume that they are going to react, because of the way that we've interacted with them in the past. So what happens now is your brain and your body start having a reaction to what you imagine is going to happen in any particular situation. So let me give you an example. So imagine that you've been out with your friends for the evening and you're out a little bit later than you anticipated. And as you pull up at the house and as you get ready to walk in the door where your husband or your wife or your partner or significant other of whatever kind is there, you start, or even maybe on the way home, you start thinking about how that other person is going to react. What might they say? What are you going to say back? How might they react? How would you react if they say that? And even if those thoughts aren't going through your head, there's a chance that if you've been thinking about how they normally react, how they always react, things that always happen, your body is going to start reacting. So maybe you get a tension in your stomach, or you start breathing a little more shallowly, and there becomes more of a fear state. So now you walk into the house with your body and your mind already prepared for the reaction that you believe is going to happen from your partner. And if it happens, then yay, you've got this justification of why you get to act this way and why you get to be upset back and say everything that you plan to say on the way home and create that same argument or that same conflict. Or you know what's going to happen, so you just shut down and go hide. Or you know what's going to happen, and so maybe you don't come home as early as you should have in the first place, or as we wanted to in the first place, right? So the way that we believe our partners are going to act actually create part of our reality. So when you're anticipating your partner's reaction, when you're anticipating your partner's mood, it actually changes your cortisol levels, the levels of your stress hormone. And long-term effects of cortisol are not very good for our body. Right? And adverse symptoms, it shows up in our body. It shows like in heart disease. It shows up as long-term sadness, feelings of disappointment, feelings of hopelessness, which for some people lead to depression or lead to anxiousness. So do you see how once we start getting a pattern of how they always or how they never can actually set us up for interacting not only with a certain way with them, but also sets us up for stress inside our body, right? Because what we think in our mind also becomes true in our body. So have you ever caught yourself fantasizing or making up stories about how another person is going to react to something? That's why it's so important to break these long-term patterns of thinkings and assumptions. So you say, okay, Dawn, how do I do that? Well, number one, start looking at what is the evidence against what it is you believe, right? Because your brain is looking for all the evidence that's already true. If you think your partner never listens to you, your brain is going to focus in on all the times you weren't listened to. And it's going to forget about all the times that you were listened to. or the ways that you were listened to that maybe wasn't quite the way you wanted to be listened to, but your partner was doing the best that they could. Number 2, look at how you're contributing. I hate to say this, but look at how you're contributing to it. So if you feel unheard, but you walk into a room as if you're not going to be heard and don't get the attention of your partner and make sure that they have an ability to pause or take a moment to hear you in the way that you need to be heard, or if you're getting emotional when you're trying to communicate, or you're having challenges. Sometimes people have 2 different communication styles. So maybe it's a challenge in communication styles, right? So there are different ways that maybe you can play with communicating with your partner where they can hear you better. Set up the situation for success for both of you rather than failure. Another thing you can do is something like emotional freedom techniques or tapping. You can learn this technique to start clearing the emotions that you still feel about all the times in the past that they did or didn't listen, or whatever it is that they always or never do. And once you clear those emotions, it actually changes how you interact with them, because you have more clarity on what might be easier. You have more courage to say what you need to say. You have more confidence. You have more choice. Right? So as you come into this situation now you can really embrace the communication. So now you can start breaking that always never cycle from your end. You can also find a different way, perhaps, of communicating. Maybe if you write it down and read it, that will be more clear. For some couples, it's best for them to actually, when they're in a high stress situation, to actually say, I need to pause right now and not talk about this right now. Can we please set up a time later to come back and talk about it? And this works really well when one of you is an external processor or more extroverted, and one of you is an internal processor or more introverted and needs to take more time. Because then you don't have the extrovert just like verbally processing out loud while the internal person is like, and then 3 days later, they're like, hey, now I'm ready to finish that conversation. The external processor is like, well, not only did I do that, but I've already moved on 4 different times, right? So you can set up an appointment actually to come back and communicate and say, hey, this is what happened. Let's really communicate about this. Or this is how I'm feeling about it. But keep it really like, have an agreement, have some safety measures. Use I statements when you have that conversation. Here's how I feel, because people can't tell you how you feel is wrong. I mean, they can, right? But you get to feel how you get to feel, right? But if you start challenging, here's what you did and how you are and you never, do you hear how like already you just want to like withdraw and contract? Nobody wants to hear you. But if you walk in and say, hey, here's how I'm feeling. Here's what I need. Is there any way you can support me in that? Is there, anything that I can do to feel more heard? Does that make sense? So you're really opening up the possibility for really clear communication. Because now instead of blaming and shaming, you're taking ownership. You're saying, hey, here's my part in it. Here's how I feel. Here's what I would like to see or like to feel or like to experience. And here's maybe how I even need to feel or experience it. You can go from there. So in summary, this then brings us to key 7, which isn't really key, but it's the nexus point. It's the decision of whether I'm going to continue or whether I'm going to end my relationship. And it can alternate for so many people. One minute you're like, yes, I really want to work on this. I've spent so much time and so much energy already. Why would I give it up? And then the next moment you're like, screw it, I'm done. I cannot do this anymore. You're confused, you're indecisive, you start thinking about what's best for the kids, what's best for everybody else, but you're really unsure. Where did our connection go? Is this all there is anymore? Is this how it's supposed to be? So by looking at these experiences, wouldn't you rather have choice, confidence, and clarity to make that decision from a place of calm and confidence and choice, rather than fear, reactivity, anger, or other negative emotions? So imagine now using these 7 keys, thinking about the key pivotal experiences that you had from ages 0 to 7. Healing the limiting beliefs that are preventing you from really connecting in your relationships. Looking at what are the vibrational cellular experiences. In other words, where is this pain stored in your body? And how do you release that, not only for your own health and well-being, but for the health and well-being of your relationship. Your negative relationship experiences. Where in the past have other relationships, whether it be friends, family members, co-workers, bosses, where have those negative experiences influenced how you're now interacting with your primary partner? Where have you been hurt or injured? Where are you vulnerable that now you're protecting yourself and that is coming out sideways on the person that you're with? Creating those negative cognitive manifestations. He always, she always, they never. Which then, of course, influences the vibrational body of the relationship itself. In other words, how you're showing up in the relationship. Because remember, there's you, there's your partner, and there's the relationship. That's the third, right? So how you are, how your partner are as individuals creates that third. And if you shift, it shifts the relationship, which also can help shift all 3 of those, right? So you're creating more of a vibrational body. So when you really truly work on these keys, if relationship is meant to end, it'll end. If it's meant to get back together, it will. But the most important thing, the thing I'd urge you to do the most, is look at healing this within yourself in the best way possible. Emotional freedom techniques, therapy, counseling, psychotherapy. Look at the videos, really deeply work on this for yourself. Because you and your relationship deserve it. Because even if you choose to move on to a new relationship, you are going to carry the same patterns into your next relationship anyway, if you don't do the work now. So let me know if I can help. Once again, I'm Dawn Bennett with Touch Remedies, a relationship coach and emotional freedom techniques practitioner. Have a really lovely evening.
There you go.
Be together.
Here's Dawn Bennett. Open the dummy for the 3rd or 4th time. Buckle pointed. Oh!
I like to cross my arm over my shoulder, don't I?
You do. She's fishing. She's fishing. Buckle pointed toward the steer.
I did it again! Woo!